Visuals. Too easy. Okay. Good evening. Okay. I have kind of a gymnasium voice, so I'm not used to talking into a microphone, but we are on TV for this, and so we want to make sure everybody at home can hear when it gets replayed. My name is Donna Gockler. I'm the director at Missoula Parks and Recreation, and we want to welcome you here this evening and really appreciate you taking your time out on the very first day of spring to talk about a park design. The Missoula Rose Garden is a very special place in our community, and Dave and James will be explaining more about the park, but for right now what I want to do is just kind of go through our agenda for the evening, talk about what we hope to get out of this from you, and then what you can expect in return. I think it was about 2 years ago, the City Council approved a funding for us to do a conceptual master site plan for the park. The reason we wanted to enter into this process is over the past several years, the Parks Department has been getting numerous requests to add additional monuments, memorial trees, pavers, just kind of on and on and on. And when we had a public meeting a few months ago, one of the things I compared that to was it would be as though you had just bought your house and moved into your living room, but everybody in the family went out shopping for furniture and all brought it home at the same time. And now you had to figure out, how does it all fit together? Does it go together? And does it represent what we wanted our living room to represent? Well, because the park is so important, because of the monuments and the memorials and the history, and because it also is a very important neighborhood and community focal point, we felt it was absolutely essential that we hear from you. What do you want that park to look like, not only today, but 20 years from now? We had a couple of other concerns in the park that we felt really needed to be addressed, and one was access. The Americans with Disabilities Act, it has been approved many, many years ago. And when I think about the Rose Gardens in the World War II monument in particular, it's not accessible. And of all places, of all parks in our community, it just seems that it's critical that we have access to these kinds of facilities and monuments. And we can't just simply come in and throw down pavers and hope it'll all turn out in the end, because we need to take care of all the monuments and the flower beds and all those things. Dave, let me introduce him, I guess, before I keep referring. This is David Shaw. He's the Parks and Trails Design and Development Manager for the city. He works within the Parks Department. And James Poole is with Wonderland Landscape Architect Design. And Jenny Minershagen of Rockingham have also been involved. And they will both be covering significant public process that we've been through. What you're going to get to see tonight is hear about the history, the research, the public process that's been accomplished to date. And one of the things that we've been trying to do within the city and through Parks and Recreation is a lot of our processes are public, and we try to honor past public process. And I think I shared this with you last time, those of you that were there. So we don't erase all the comments from the last several pieces of public comment. We keep building on those. And it's important that we honor and respect each of the bits of information we receive along the way. And I just share that with you so that you know, as this plan progresses, your comments are still valid and important, that they don't just go away because we go on to the next step. So that leads me into next steps. After we do the presentation this evening, we'll take back your comments, and we gave everybody a comment sheet and some draft guiding principles that will go with the plan that you'll see. So in any master site plan, what you'll have is both a visual, a picture, if you will, and that's the vision, the picture, and then we put the written document with it to help define that picture further, so that if we all go away and Dave and James and I are all gone, whoever follows us can implement the plan that we all decided was the group vision, the community vision. So after we hear from you, and depending on what those comments are, we will either make amendments to the plan or it'll be ready to go forward as is. And that really depends on what you have to say this evening. When we do take it forward, it will go next to the City Parks and Recreation Board, which is an advisory committee, to the mayor and city council. And they meet the second Tuesday of each month. And so again, depending on how this goes, we'll either take that plan to them in April or May. And then from that point, they make additional comments, adoption, and recommendation for approval to City Council. And that's sort of the process we go by with parks of this significance, is we want to make sure that it goes all the way through City Council and at least gets their nod of approval, because then that means that we can start implementing the plan. And an important piece about this plan is, no, we don't have any current money to implement the plan. Whatever the plan is that we all decide upon, but the important piece here is that we do have a common vision, because in a park like Memorial Rose Park, with the numerous requests and numerous stakeholders who want to make changes to the park or make it better, we can show them the picture so they can help implement it. And the best example I can give you is when the McCormick Park Master Site Plan was approved, I think it was in 2003, I honestly never dreamt that we'd be able to have so much of that vision implemented 5 years later. But I think because we had a shared vision as a community and there was a lot of public process, everybody could kind of bite off their piece, if you will. You know, the skateboarders got involved and they raised their money, and the aquatics folks got involved, and the softball people got involved because they all knew what the picture was. And so they've all been bringing money or energy or in-kind services to that project. And pretty soon, Silver's Lagoon was a good one in the park. That's about 6 different funding sources. So the vision is really critical into moving a project forward, and it may take 20 years or longer. It might happen in 5. It just depends on the community. I think that's all I have for today. I think I'll turn it over to Dave.
Good evening. I really appreciate everybody coming out to come see what the plan is for Rose Garden. I'm going to fix my setup here just real quick. I don't want to be standing behind the desk while I'm all talking to you guys. Let's see. Okay. As Donna said, I'm Dave Shaw. I'm with Parks and Recreation, Design Development Manager there. And what I wanted to start off with tonight is, what's the purpose for the master plan? And Donna's really touched on that already. It's a long range vision. It's a goal that we need to achieve. And with with the Memorial Rose Garden in particular, we know that the park's going to grow, and so various questions come up when that realization hits. It's going to grow. What do we do? The questions of how do we meaningfully place new monuments as those requests come in? How do we make them just as meaningful as the ones that are there? How do we make them fit with the memorials that are already there? How do we care for those new memorials and the ones that we have? How would the master plan support or accommodate appropriate uses in the park? And how do we enhance accessibility? Since this is a memorial park, it needs to be accessible for universally for people of all different abilities. And so the master plan is a document that helps us answer these critical questions. The purpose, again, is this goal, this long-range vision. It gives us some place to go so that 20 or 30 years from now, we don't look back and say, well, how did we get to where we're at? And all throw up our hands and say, well, I don't know. The master plan is that guiding document that helps us know where to put things as they come in. It's a guide for growth. It creates a unified space. It creates a cohesive experience within the park, and it helps the memorials all relate to one another. It helps the memorials that are there be celebrated in an appropriate way, and also allows for new memorials to be brought in and celebrated within the park. again, like Donna said, it could happen over a very long period of time. It could happen over, a few years. It all depends on funding and effort and the things that go into it. Some of the guiding principles that we have that we've given to the public all the way through this whole process are these that I have up on the board. The park needs to fit a lot of these criteria. It needs to be affordable to implement. It needs to be feasible so that we can actually do it. And so the design needs to do that. It needs to be accessible because that is such a huge issue in this park. The design should be fair, legal, and equitable for all people. Should be safe, maintainable, appropriate space, with appropriate activities. And again, it should be unified in its design so that the end result is something that's cohesive, something that's meaningful, and something that really does justice to the purpose of a memorial park. So where have we been so far, and where are we headed? Got a question in the back?
Under those guiding principles, the last time we have brought up about having taking into account the historical significance of the park.
Correct.
Isn't on there.
So I'm going to repeat that question since we're being filmed. He said last time we talked about making sure that the historical significance of the park is used as a guiding principle. That's correct, and that actually shows up later on in the slideshow. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. So moving on here, just kind of where we've come and where we're headed, the process so far. We did an extensive site survey and analysis and came up with a map kind of like what you're seeing down here on the corner that shows property boundaries and tree locations, and every sprinkler head was mapped, and so we have an inventory of what's existing in the park. From there we moved on to a public survey that we sent out. That surveyed interest groups in the park, and it also surveyed individuals, so we could get sort of our first round of comments back to find out what people expect from the park, what the goals are with the park, that kind of thing. And that was all done through mail and through the internet. We did historical research and actually hired a local historian to look up documentation and old meeting minute notes and Rose Society things and all sorts of stuff to be able to give us the background for what this park is really meant for. And we've taken all of that into account as we've moved through this process of creating the master plan. One of the really cool things that came out of that was this image that you're seeing here, which is a site plan of what was actually installed in the park in 1947. And so you're seeing the rose gardens laid out right here, just how you're seeing them now. And each one of these little points is one of the trees that was planted in the park back in 1947. So found some really interesting history there. We then moved on to hiring professional design consultants, and that's where Wonderland Landscape Architecture and Rockingham Design teamed up to be our design team to put together this master plan. We held then the public open house in October, where we presented to the public 4 different ways that a master plan could be applied to Rose Park. And we received comment from that and have incorporated those comments into the final master plan. We've moved into design development, which then turned out the final master plan, which we want to present to you tonight. Okay, a quick overview of some of the historical research that we came up with. Again, the park was established in 1944. We have various memorials there from Vietnam, Korea, Grenada, Panama, Persian Gulf, and several others, as well as the law enforcement memorial that we have in the park. The Rose Society does purchase and continues to maintain the roses within the park, and we greatly appreciate that effort. And then in 1999, the garden was designated as the state Veterans Memorial Garden and a state Korean War Memorial. So those are all significant pieces of history that needed to be incorporated and thought about as we move through the process.
You didn't include the Blue Star Memorial.
I'm sorry, I couldn't list every memorial on that particular site because I'd run out of room. There are quite a few in the park, and they are.
Memorial
I'm sorry? Question is, are we going to have a limit on the memorials? That's a really good question, and maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we'll be able to address that a little bit better once you see the master plan. And right, so asked if there's going to be room for a memorial for a rock. We're definitely looking to the future for what may be coming down the pike. And of course, we want to be able to accommodate as much as we can. And, that hasn't been approached to us yet, but we're definitely thinking about it. So when we send out the individual and group surveys by mail and by internet to try to gauge what the public's feelings were about the park and what the expectations were, and this is a summary of some of the things that came out of that. These are pretty much items that had a lot of consensus within all of our survey responses. Things as that the park is obviously important to remember those who have served. Another thing that was pretty evident throughout all the survey responses is that people felt like it was not appropriate to have alcohol in the park. And so you'll see that turning up in our policies for how we manage the park. The park is a space for events. People felt like this is a great place to have gatherings, and it's appropriate to have gatherings there. But that we want to be able to manage the number of people that come to those events. And there was actually some discrepancy on whether the groups be small or whether they be large, but that there be management of those group sizes nonetheless. And again, you'll see that turn up in our policies. The park design should focus on memorials and the roses as per the original plans back in the 1940s, and I think you'll see that the master plan that we've developed honors that. The park should serve veterans, the community, and the neighborhood, and that also was taken into account. Some of the event types that were brought up through the surveys, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but events for veterans, for Rose Society, weddings, just individual quiet contemplation, and of course limiting amplification within the park to be able to honor the the qualities that we want to uphold in the park. Some of the amenities that people felt were really important was a restroom, which we don't have in the park right now. And anytime we have an area where we are gathering a lot of people together, we want to be able to provide services that help make those gatherings a lot nicer. And a restroom is one of those. Accessible surfacing so that folks with mobility issues can get around in the park. They can experience the memorials in a meaningful way and don't have to go over difficult surfaces. Structure for gatherings, more signage, more lighting, well, some lighting. We don't have any lighting in the park apparently right now, but lighting and more benches for sitting, and more roses and flower beds, and then also having some open green space for gatherings and for neighborhood use and that kind of thing. I'm sorry, there was a comment? Yeah, and throw a ball for a dog. And, that we definitely want to be able to accommodate neighborhood uses. We won't see any structured recreation facilities here. The green spaces aren't really big enough for, Frisbee football or anything like that. So, and I don't feel like that would, we don't feel like that would be appropriate or consistent with what the purpose of the park is. You won't see that in the master plan. So from there, we took all that information and handed it off to our landscape architects, and they were able to come up with four very different approaches to how we could guide development within the park. And we presented those to the public in October and got a lot of great responses. It was a good way to start the conversation going of how do we want to attack this and where do we think we really want to go in the future. And of course, the four different plans focused on, they took one aspect of the park and really accentuated it, really focused on it. And the first plan was a grassy neighborhood park, second was formal gardens, third, monuments and memorials, and fourth was gathering places and events. With that, I think I'll turn it over to James Poole from Wonderland to be able to just quickly review those 4 plans and then walk you through how we developed the final master plan.
Thank you, Dave. I'm not used to hearing my voice amplified. I'm not sure that I like it all that much. Is this set up to just go on the arrows? As Dave said, we developed 4 concepts, and what we were trying to do was intentionally accentuate some element of the park that may or may not strike the fancy of a particular group of users, but we really wanted to generate some conversation about what direction the park would take, and we felt like one way to do that was to show a lot of examples that really went in different directions, and people could then say, I really don't like that, or I really do like that. So, and the intention all along was that none of these would be the final master plan design, but more that they would all, elements of each would potentially be incorporated into what we landed on. So this design concentrated on the idea of the park as a neighborhood space, a little bit more for recreational use, enough green space that some somewhat more active recreational things could be going on. We completely moved the Rose Garden to a different location. The idea here was that we would concentrate the memorial portion of the park to the north end. And all of these left the Vietnam Memorial, the Korean Memorial, in the same place. Some of them did move the World War II Memorial, but those 2 memorials are consistent in all of them. But we took the liberty to move some of the other memorials just to raise the issue of whether that was appropriate, whether it wasn't. So this was an idea that we put forth, that the park could become something that was fairly divided between memorial uses on one end, moving the Rose Garden, and creating a fairly spacious green space on the other end that was more useful potentially for the surrounding neighborhood as a neighborhood park use for the Frisbee and the throwing the ball for the dog and those sorts of things. We introduced the idea that we could have a water element in the center that would be kind of a focal point for the park. And I'll try not to dive into these too much if that's appropriate. I know some of you were at the previous meetings and have seen these, so I don't want to spend the entire meeting time this evening on these, but I'll try to hit the highlights. Well, that's certainly an opinion that may be shared by many.
Would you please repeat the question?
I'm sorry.
We can't all hear that.
Yes, thank you very much. This young woman mentioned that she thought that she feels like perhaps that when a memorial is put in a place that it should stay in that place in perpetuity in honor of that memorial. As holy ground for that memorial. And that's certainly a valid point of view, and some of these concepts did take that point of view and left all the memorials, the existing memorials, right where they are. Oh, you're welcome. Oh. Wow. We have some honored guests here. Yes. Thank you for making us aware of that. Yes.
I think also not just the memorials, but moving the Rose Garden would also help damage the roses, not to mention the fact that it is old ground and it has been that way since the beginning of the park.
This is wonderful. This is exactly what we were trying to get at by presenting an option such as this. That is a fairly radical change. It's a fairly heavy-handed alteration of the existing park.
Those roses that are put in that park every year, they come from the American Rose Society, not the Missoula Rose Society. The Missoula Rose Society puts it in, they get it from the American Rose Society.
The first plaques that were put in there were hybrids. And the Rose Society wanted to see in 1946 if a rose could make it to Ohio, and it could make it to Minnesota. Didn't work.
Could I just interject just for a moment? What would be really helpful to us is I'll start taking notes on your comments, but if we can maybe get James to get through the 4 plans, because none of those were actually accepted based on all your comments the last time. So maybe we can get to that plan.
You want to do that? I'm good with that. And I also have another slide. Dave, do you want to speak to this? I have a slide actually at the end that has all 4 plans together on one slide. So we'll use that one.
Thanks, James. Okay, so this, what you're seeing here is a summary of the comments that we got from our October open house. That was when we presented the 4 divergent plans to everybody. We gathered all their comments, and these are the things that came up as consensus sort of items from everybody's comments. One of the big ones that stood out again was the need for a restroom. We definitely need to see that in the park, and so these are all things that you see brought into the master plan and our guiding principles. Again, no alcohol in the park. The park is primarily contemplative with passive use, picnicking, walking, remembering, among all the other things that we had up there on the board a little while ago. The park should focus on memorials and roses. And this is the point that gets to your comment in the back, that the design should be based on the historical character and purpose of the park. Accessibility is, was brought up as a major issue. And people should be able to get to the roses, the flower gardens, the trees, the benches, the memorials. People should be able to get around in this park no matter what their abilities are. So we'll turn it back over to James to talk about the new plan.
Thanks, Dave. I also have a hard copy of this plan that I'll put up at this time too, because I'm not sure which one is going to be more easily visible. So what we did was pull the elements of the 4 concept plans into a final plan that represented elements of most of them, but probably not all of them. The plan that received the greatest accolades at our previous open house and through the survey process was overwhelmingly Plan B, Memorial Garden Plan. And the crux of this plan was that we very much honored the history of the site. We looked at the wonderful original drawings for Rose Park, and actually we didn't see those drawings until after we had produced this, and we're just amazed at how closely this plan resembled some of the things that were on that original plan. It was wonderful that way, and really kind of cemented this with us as being a very, very appropriate way of approaching the design of the park and the organization of it. The Rose Garden remains essentially where it is. It's amplified a little bit. It's made accessible. It's one of the big deals. And we create some strong accesses. There are some accesses, 2 main accesses in the park now, but this really plays up on that. We create some major entries off of Brooks and off of, Blaine as well. And we carry an entrance all the way back to Franklin Street that is on access with the center of the Rose Garden. This plan also proposed the idea of a rose pavilion, that being a focal feature within the Rose Memorial Garden that would serve also as a shelter, a place to get out of inclement weather, a place to gather, and for some of the kind of impromptu event uses that happen at the park, as well as some of the planned ones. Yes, sir?
Where's the World War II memorial?
The World War II memorial is exactly where it is now. So this, you can see this is pretty, not verbatim, but definitely follows design concept B to a large degree. The World War II memorial is right here, and that's exactly in the place where it is now, so we're not moving that at all. We've arranged kind of the geometry of the Rose Garden itself around that memorial, as it is now, and just created a series of pathways and walkways in the garden that allow accessibility to the entire garden. We did move the Rose Pavilion, is what we're calling this structure, this shelter. Probably not one of the initial phase improvements of the park, in that it will be a structure, there will be some costs associated with it, certainly. But proposing that when and if that does happen, that we shift it down to this end of the park. It creates a kind of a focal terminus for this arbor way. We're calling this an arbor way. And this is basically a nice, wide, grand ceremonial walkway that connects the World War II Rose Memorial Garden with the memorials that are on the north end of the site. The other major component that you see here, it's fun coming up with nice names that help sell these ideas. But we're calling this the Veterans Promenade. And the idea here, again, here's the Korean Memorial in its location, Vietnam Memorial in its location, the Persian Gulf, the other conflict memorial in their existing locations. All of these, we were able to design this very formal walkway that doesn't mess with the location of any of those memorials and actually serves to unite them. In the center of this, we're calling this the flag court. This could be, we're envisioning that the flags that are there now are moved to this space. It's kind of a space that isn't dedicated to any particular conflict, but to just veterans in general and those and others who serve the public. And that could potentially have some reflective water feature associated with it, although that may or may not come to pass. Yes? Excuse me? Okay, the law enforcement memorial we envisioned, the idea really was that we did want to divide the site into a memorial area and kind of the public green area. And the police memorial, we decided to propose moving it into this location. And what came to pass was the idea that it really made a lot of sense to have the public service memorials in somewhat of the same portion of the park as the other memorials. And so we dedicated this section of the park, this kind of the northeast corner, as the public service memorial area, where the police memorial and potentially a future fire memorial might be located. The Blue Star Memorial marker stays in its existing location, and actually the idea here was that part of this concept is creating a view shed, an intentional view shed, and kind of a front door to the park. The park now doesn't have a lot of really designated, the entryways aren't played up and celebrated the way they could be, and that's one thing that we address with a more of a ceremonial entry at this location, this location, this location. But then the truth is that an awful lot of people who experience this park do so from their automobiles. They're not really setting foot in the park. So we really felt like it was important to acknowledge that and to create a strong, intentional, designed view shed into the park from this corner. And the Blue Star Memorial gets incorporated into the idea of creating a little more of an amplified plaza space down in this corner. We're thinking that we could do some sort of park signage at that corner. The idea here, it's very conceptual. The idea is that in this location we have park signage, we have the Blue Star Memorial, we have an intentional, view that's created into the park. The drawing shows that maybe this park signage occurs on a low wall that curves and kind of defines that corner, and the park signage is lettering on that wall or something to that effect is how it's drawn. But we need to remember that this is conceptual, and it's really the bigger ideas that we're trying to convey. How much space we gain? Well, part of what we're doing is trying to, the law enforcement memorial right now is pretty much right in this. Actually, these 3 trees are in front of it. The trees that are behind it are not shown, or they're shown as being relocated in this drawing, but it's right about in this area. Part of what we're gaining is just trying to address some sentiment that we got in the preliminary surveys that some people want to be able to go to the park and not feel like they're going to a memorial place.
That's what it is, for God's sakes.
But that's was part of the thought with that, is that we want an area of the park. We wanted to help create, the intention with that public green was that there was an area of the park that families could go for picnics and go and spend some time and feel like they were just enjoying, kind of reconnecting with nature without necessarily having to be within the memorial component of the park. And I think that was...
James,
Yes.
might you also address, we got a lot of comments about actually removing the playground from the park and about making sure that we recognize the monuments in a more contemplative way. And my understanding is part of the reason we moved all the monuments to one side of the park is to keep that quietness, that contemplative feel. The Veterans Promenade leads right into the service memorials. And then there was also a lot of comments about desire for things like weddings, and oftentimes when there are weddings, people do bring children with them. And so by allowing a space that's somewhat less formal and allowing the formality at the same time, I thought that our design team did a really good job of amplifying, if you will, the importance of the monuments, and then still providing space for public gathering that wouldn't be right on top of a monument, if you will.
No playground?
There's a play area, but no designated playground, and that came from public comment from this group.
Yes, and really, we're walking a fine line of trying to address the needs of the various groups that would like to use this park. And I think we were very intentionally made this park very much about memorials, and it stayed that way. There was also sentiment that there are families that use the park on occasion. There are other events in the park, and there are children in the park. And so this, what's identified as K here, is identified as a play area. And essentially, it was very important to us that this be a really low-key element, but at the same time that there be an acknowledgement that there will be children and it'd be nice to have a place for them to go and play in the sand and climb rocks.
Where is that on that?
That is right here.
So you're gonna take all that equipment from the back there, hidden away, and put it down there?
No, and absolutely not. And that was very much what we didn't want to do, was to have it be a playground, so to speak. So the idea is that this is not a play structure of any sort. It's not a slide and a swing and it's painted red and blue. It's not that sort of thing. At the same time, it's an area where kids can go, and maybe it's a sand area that has some boulders in it that kids can climb on and that sort of thing, and occupy themselves and, connect with nature, and that it be a very natural element. And that when you look at it as an adult, you might not think, oh, that's a playground. But as a child, it's a place to kind of have some adventure.
Some of the memorials are actually rocks and boulders, and I don't think that this park should have people throwing frisbees, and we are surrounded by two national forests, 5 national wilderness areas. I mean, we are in Montana, and so I keep saying connecting with nature. We're in the middle of Missoula, and this is the only park that's designated for memorials. And I personally take issue with children romping next to the Blue Star Memorial. I think that's disrespectful to the Blue Star Memorial. And that entire park is filled with trees representing people that have died. For instance, Private First Class Andrew Bedard, where is his tree? Because where you're showing that walkway, I think that's where the Andrew Bedard tree is located.
As I said, we're walking, a fine line of trying to be respectful and trying to acknowledge all of the uses that people would like to see in this park, and sometimes those are conflicting uses. The public green in this design, the size of the public green really was reduced down to a size that it's not a place, like Dave said earlier, where you're going to be playing, frisbee football or whatever. It's more of just an open lawn space that's of enough size that you can have, a family.
Can I interject something here? I think you're on the line very well, in my opinion. Something everybody must realize here. Two of these memorials are called state memorials. This could draw in quite a few people from out of our area in here. Now, I realize I live here and I have access to a lot of other things, but someone driving in here with their family and a lot of the other systems, going to need those entities that you just mentioned. That I think we should keep in mind. It is a park designed for what we're talking about, but your idea of providing these other things, maybe I don't need them that much. I live right here. I can go any place I like, but the outlying areas, people that used to live here, are probably got a lot of close connection with this park. Be sure you take care of their needs, and I think you're doing that, in my opinion, here on the other things. But hope everyone looks at it.
We live next to it, right across the street. And there's something that would come up in regard to restrooms. Why don't you guys take one of this bucks that you're spending on all these renovations and buy out the house on the corner and put them over there?
We do put restrooms in this design, and restrooms were pretty loud and clear listed as one of the things that should happen in the park. The restroom, and again, this isn't terribly visible here, but N here is a restroom, and the thought that initially, initially, the restroom would probably consist of something along the lines of a porta potty. There wouldn't be funding to have a permanent restroom structure in one of the early phases. And that one way to address this would be to locate a restroom, an interim restroom is what we're calling it, in this location, but that in the long term, down the road, the restroom could and probably would be incorporated into the pavilion structure that was built.
But a lot of parks don't have their bathrooms maintained now, and there's horrible odor coming from it, so, and toilet paper, and homeless people that are in and out of these buildings, and people live living right next to.
Restaurants are always a very controversial element.
James, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Would it be okay with everybody if James finished his presentation and then we can break out into a Q&A? That'll work a lot better for MCAT. And I think if he could finish, everybody will get a chance to comment. And please keep in mind this is a long-term vision for a plan. I am writing down all of your comments. And let's have James wrap up so that we can give you all of your survey documents and we can have you come up and take a close look and make specific comments that we can then get recorded.
I have one more question.
Okay.
What are you going to do about parking?
What are we going to do about parking? Parking was considered, and it was decided that parking really wouldn't be an appropriate thing to bring into the park itself. The layout of the neighborhood is such that it really can accommodate a fair amount of parking. We don't anticipate, by limiting the size of events that would be allowed at the park, that we really wouldn't be dealing with events that would have more cars than we're having at events now. Okay, so I think I've pretty much walked through the elements of the new design, and we can certainly talk more about it, and there's been some great conversation, and we're happy to take as much of that as you want to give us. Along with the master plan are some set of plan guidelines, and I believe if you picked up the handout at the front door, there's a sheet that lists these guidelines. So I'm not going to go through them verbatim, but I will just kind of hit the highlights of the guideline portion of the product that we're giving to the Parks Department. And the guideline portion is a really important part of the product, because really what we're showing here is representative, but there are a lot of things that we can't show in pictures that we want to talk about further in words. But the other thing that I'll let you know is, and as you're reading through this, you may think it's really, I call it squishy, and I'm not sure why I've landed on that word, but there isn't a lot of really hard stuff in here. I mean, there's a few areas where we talk about, size of paving materials, a few little things like that, but to a large degree, this talks a lot about feelings and sensory experience and emotions, and kind of guides the quality of the development in the park, rather than being highly prescriptive about what materials have got to be used. And I know there's a tendency from government organizations, they would love to have really hard, no, it says right here that we cannot put in a glass memorial. We kind of tried to shy away from that, because memorials are very much, in many cases, an artistic statement, and they represent a lot of emotion, and we don't know that 40 years from now we might want to create a memorial that is of a certain material or of a certain character, and we wouldn't want to disallow that as being legitimate at this time. So what we tried to talk about more in the guidelines is kind of the feelings that we'd like to capture, and letting there be some opportunity to grow into the future without being too prescriptive. The major concept and purpose talks about basically dividing the park into two major areas, the two major use areas being the memorial area and the neighborhood green. We talk also about design iconography, and that's kind of a funny word, but it really gets to the idea of quality, and that's one of the points in the written part of the guidelines, that we, in various ways, we want to ensure that as the park develops, that it does so with integrity and quality. And there are various ways that we talk about trying to assure that. We talked a little bit about how to add new memorials, and there was a question earlier about how many new memorials are we going to allow in this park? And that was a very big question that kind of drove, I think, from the park's perspective, the undertaking of this process. And we don't list a finite number of new memorials that can be allowed in this park. We create some spaces where we consider would be good spaces for future memorials, and they're around this promenade. But we also talk about the concept of overlaying memorials, the idea also that we can have living memorials. The Rose Garden itself is a living memorial. It seems very appropriate that there could be other living memorials on the site, and maybe that's a grove of trees. And so those types of memorials that could be overlaid rather than in the traditional sense of, designating a 30-foot square where you can put a new memorial, allows for flexibility in the future and allows for creativity in the future. So we're not saying we can have 4 new memorials here and then they've got to go somewhere else. We're saying more, these are the feelings we want to hold on to. These are some innovative ways that memorials could be added. The other really important thought that came up in the process was that if we can overlay new memorials, if we can find ways to integrate new and old remembrances, that will be a way of assuring that the older monuments continue to be cared for. Because we're at a point now, we don't have very many World War II veterans around to help take care of the World War II memorial anymore. And as time goes on, the same things are going to happen with the Korean Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial, and there's some concern that when the veterans are not here anymore to be the ones who take care of the memorials, who's going to be taking care of those memorials? So we tried to write the guidelines in a way that would encourage some overlaying of new and old generational ties that would keep these memorials fresh and well cared for. Another thing we're doing in the guidelines is breaking down some suggestions for how the new park gets phased in. And it's going to be a long process. And some of the elements that are going to be more costly probably are not going to happen up front. But there certainly are some things that can happen up front. So it's part of the phase 1 for improvements to the park, are just kind of the low-hanging fruit, the simpler things like the maintaining of the vegetation that is going to remain, and assuring that new plantings that happen in the park can happen, but they should follow the ideas of where the new plantings are going to be down the road with the new design, things like that. And I don't think I'm going to dive into that any more than that. Is that all right? You all have a copy of that, so you can kind of read through that and make comments. And there's an opportunity to make comments beyond this meeting, certainly, too.
Okay, thank you very much, James. I appreciate the detailed going through that master plan. So what we're going to do now, as Donna was saying, is go ahead and open it up to you. I'd like to pass the microphone around to anybody that has a question or a comment. I can grab this microphone and we can try to give responses to those comments. So we'll just go ahead and start over here. If you all don't mind just sharing the microphone, pass it around.
Well, I have several comments, and I'll try to keep them as brief as possible. My main concern is the dollars that this is going to cost us. We saw the paper, the Missoulian, last week, the number of issues that are coming up that are going to be bond issues that we're going to be required to pay for, and these are our dollars, so don't make any mistake about that. We are going to be paying for this. Second issue, I think, is the restroom. I think that's a major mistake. A restroom would be extremely costly, and it would require somebody to maintain it, and the obvious reason for an unattended restroom, I don't need to go into. I think sidewalks are a major issue, and I think they should be taken care of so that disabled and other people visiting the memorial can have access to all of the memorials. There should not be a water feature. Water features are a major concern, very costly in this part of the country. And that isn't just my view, that's the view of other people, landscape architects that I've talked to. Usage of the park. I think we're overestimating the usage of the park. Unless there is a major event going on, I go by that park every day, and there are very few people in that park. In the summertime, the usage goes up, and special events draw a lot of people, so that's fine. I'm absolutely 100% against moving any of the existing memorials. That should not be done. That would be so costly, it would be out of the park. As far as children coming to weddings, there's nothing wrong with children having fun at a wedding in the convenience of wherever the memorials are. There's nothing wrong with that. That is not anything that's a negative in my view. Okay. I've made a few notes. Yeah.
And we do want to allow plenty of time for...
Excuse me, I should have introduced myself. I'm Charlie Crookshanks. I'm the chairman of the Korean War Memorial Committee. Gary's on our committee. And we have a major stake in what's going on in this park. And I intend to write a letter and I'll detail all this.
Appreciate your comments, Charlie, and we can go ahead and move on. Yeah, we'll try to, if you don't mind, keep comments brief so we have plenty of time for everybody.
Just a couple of quick ones. Number one, I live by Pineview Park in the Rattlesnake, and every time they put a Don's John in there, someone has blown it up. And they quit putting them in there. There are no latrine or bathroom facilities there now. And I know they're looking at trying to put some permanent in there, and it's very expensive. 3 times they've blown that John up. They finally quit putting it in there. The other thing is the children's playground. I would hope that you would not take down the children's playground that's over hiding behind these trees here, right along this road here. That's a very busy place for children. And when they come to the park and the parents come, the kids go over there and play. Why move a playground area down into here, is my question.
Appreciate those comments. Thank you for sharing the microphone.
My name is Susan Renaud, and I am Secretary of the United Veterans Council, and I'm a life member of the American Legion and VFW auxiliaries. And I share Charlie Crookshank's concerns that I say ditto to what he said. I also am very concerned about a pavilion because, first of all, I don't know how large it's going to be. And I have expressed an email to the Recreation Department that I personally have an objection to weddings. because I was in charge of monitoring weddings at the Boone and Crockett Club. And because of guests that got out of control, the Boone and Crockett Club eliminated weddings from their uses for that building. And I could envision people trampling the roses and denigrating the memorials, and the amount of money that's collected for the deposit also would not be enough to cover probably the expenses. And as I said before I was on the mic, I have real objection for any memorial being moved, and not just so much because of the cost, but because I think that is an insult to the people who plan the memorials. And I know for a pretty much of a fact that that walkway that is unusually large, that you call the promenade, is an awful lot of cement. And it would make more sense if you're going to do some kind of a oval promenade, you make it smaller so there's more room. And finally, I object, frankly, for this park to be used for anything but memorials. I do not think we should have picnic tables here. I don't think there should be a toilet, especially facing someone's house.
Just a quick clarification, just to throw this in there, because maybe there's a little misconception of some of the things that are being proposed here. Let me back up to the plan really quick. So we did talk about the restroom. That would be down in this corner as it's shown here. That's, again, this is a schematic plan. It's a guide. It's not set in stone. But any interim restroom would probably be, if it were a porta pot, it would be set inside of a shelter that would match architecture within the park. It would be a nice looking facility, just to throw it out as clarification. Also, the material that you're seeing here in the promenade and throughout the Rose Garden is a crushed granite material that would be ADA accessible. So wheelchairs and whatnot would be able to roll on this material just fine. It would remain permeable so that stormwater would be able to go through that material throughout the park. So it would be accessible, would not be concrete. That's what we're looking at doing at this point. So,
Can I speak up?
yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a World War II veteran of the Battle of Bulge, and I live right across the street from the, I live right across the street from the park, right at the corner of Mountain Blaine, and a beautiful spot, and the park's a beautiful spot. But there is a problem with this problem of a bathroom, because we've had young buckos come over and use our yard as a restroom, and vice versa. It's happened over there because I've gone over there and I didn't wade in it, but I was aware of it. Now that, as far as a bathroom is concerned, it is expensive. And it cost, and it would be difficult to maintain. But if you're going to have some sort of controls on the use of that park, there should be some way that people could have access to a bathroom other than going to somebody's house and ask them if they can use it, if they do.
Can I just interject that we really hope that we'll get all your comments in writing, and we really do want everybody to have a chance to speak very briefly if they need to. If you do want to go, you're more than welcome to write down your comments, and they're of equal value to us as we review as the spoken comments. You don't have to feel like you need to wait. I don't want people to think that they have to stay throughout.
Okay, we have a comment over here really quick. Is that all right if we jump over to this side of the room and then we'll come back? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Do
sure.
you mind coming up to the we'll steal this microphone over here.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Smith, and I live right near the Rose Park. And I participated in a neighborhood planning process for 9 traffic circles to try to prevent the excessive speeding in the neighborhood. And we had our meetings over at the Rose Park at a picnic table that was very near the roses. And I want to speak very strongly in favor of the neighbors being able to come and plan for whatever needs to be planned for in the neighborhood. And so we need to have that neighborhood green area, and we need to have a place to meet as a picnic table, something simple. But, you know, I don't want to get into all the other details because I think it's up to the people who have been working with memorials over time. But I really think it's important for the neighbors to be able to have meetings in the Rose Park and to enjoy the roses.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and come over here, and then we'll come back to this side.
Okay, I agree with an awful lot of things that people are saying, but I do kind of want to go back to this proposal about buying that house. If the city could buy the house that's out there on the corner, it's an eyesore, it's a disgrace. They do not take care of the yard. The trees are falling down, the shrubs are out of control, and I think the city should definitely consider buying that house, moving it off the premises, and making that a part of the park. It could even help with the parking and the restroom and all kinds of things.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and jump back over to this side of the room, and then we'll come back over here to whoever else is next. Sorry, we're kind of tethered in here, so you have to...
My name is Julie McGill, and I'm with the Missoula Law Enforcement Memorial, and we strongly object to moving it. Number one, you know, ours is very visible from the street. It's extremely accessible, and that was the plan from the very get-go, seeing how we do have an officer who was injured in the line of duty and now is bound to his wheelchair, and he comes. We have a ceremony once a year, every single year. It's not just attended by Missoula Police Department, but we have national law enforcement officers who come expecting to be at this ceremony. They know exactly where it is. We have a huge concern about moving the play area to one of the most dangerous intersections in that entire neighborhood, Brooks and Mount, where the play area is now for the kids. Like you have all said before, it's very well hidden, but yet the parents can keep an eye on their kids. They have a good time. Yeah, while the events are going on, but it's not in direct view of what the ceremonies that are going on. It is a nice opportunity for the kids to be able to get away from what's going on so they can concentrate on the ceremony that's happening. But if it is to be moved, which we hope that it really isn't, who will pay for it? That's going to be our biggest thing. The monument company, who was gracious enough to help us get that erected in the first place, has given us a quote of over $100,000 to move that. There's not going to be, and who would be paying for any of the damages for the granite monument that's there, as well as all of the pavers. I mean, there are over 109 families who that is their resting place for their family member who has died, and serving our community and our state. And that would just be a terrible disgrace to those families to pick up and move their essential headstones. I mean, we actually have people who, and families who, that is their one and only place that they can come and remember their family member. Yeah, like I said, every year we do hold the Missoula Law Enforcement Memorial event. We're getting ready and planning it this year, and we have so many people from not just Missoula, like I said, but from the state, from Washington, Idaho, Canada, that expect this to happen, and they know where it is, and they get tons and tons of compliments about the park in general, because not only are they sitting around looking at our memorial, but they are visiting the other memorials and recognizing how beautiful it is and what a great job that the society puts in maintaining all of the roses and the gardens themselves. And that's not just a tribute to the law enforcement memorial, folks who, we take care of that ourselves, but it's to everybody who's involved. The World War II veterans, we don't know how many people get their pictures taken at the flags. I mean, that's one of our biggest things that people like to do. So again, I just want to say that those of us who represent the law enforcement memorial are strongly opposed moving anybody's memorials.
Appreciate that. Does anybody else have the microphone? We've got one in back, and then we'll come up to you. Oh,
One thing.
okay, if you wouldn't mind, yep, grab the microphone.
Only
and
one
speak.
thing I'd like to, there's a lot of good ideas being put there, and pro and con, but the restroom is something that's been on my mind a lot. And I don't know how many people have asked me about that. Gee, I wish we had a restaurant out here. I realize, as the people mentioned here, it's very difficult to police a restroom, to keep it in place. It's expensive. So I don't know how you want to look at this, but the playground where it is fits me very well. I guess if I was going to select a place for some kind of a bathroom or a restroom, it would be back there somewhere, I guess. But to exclude a bathroom and just throw it out, we got people coming out of state from everywhere. And the lady just mentioned the popularity of that park. It really is, and myself, I'm very proud of that and very happy for all the people that put that effort into it. And I don't hear any negative words, but the bathroom issue is a big issue that I don't think we can just ignore. I don't know.
Appreciate that. One more, yep, back there.
Well, the park's been there since '45, I guess, and there haven't been bathrooms there since. So I don't see the point in having them now. And I don't see the point in having weddings. You charge $50 for a wedding. You have rules about steak pounding in, and the limit is like 4 inches or 6 inches or something. In the one wedding I went to, the steak were 2 feet into the ground, where they can damage the underwater sprinkler system. And then the same wedding was there for 7 hours at least. So where the heck were all those people going potty during that 7 hours? I'm sure they go behind the bushes where it's unhealthy, and the lights, by the way, are not maintained at the park now, so 3 of them were out at the Vietnam Memorial, plus the lights on the main flag were out. And really, this is a state memorial park, just like it's on the map as a state memorial park. It's not a neighborhood park. And suddenly 1/3 of the park, of which was designated for memorials, 1/3 of it is suddenly not for memorials anymore. We're moving them all to one end, and I don't saying it's for some other use, and never in the future will there be memorials on that end of the park. Picnics bring garbage. I've worked on campgrounds for the Forest Service, and I know how much garbage you get out of it, and there's no place. In fact, right now, there's no garbage cans over there that I know of. I visit the Vietnam Memorial regularly. And the cost is a concern, and I can appreciate these folks' concern about the house at the end of the block, but we're talking probably $100,000, $200,000 more on the taxpayer that I'm going to have to pay for a house, to buy it, to get rid of the eyesore. And moving these memorials at $100,000 a piece, that's not easy. You got to build new foundations to put them in. There's plenty of other places for picnics in this town than at the park.
Thank
Could
you.
I give please interject that, please write your comments down, and I want people to feel free that they can go. If everybody's had a chance to speak, I guess we'll start the mic over again, but otherwise, is everybody done that wanted to speak? Charlie, do you mind if we give everybody a chance?
Yes, I do. I just have one other comment, and I'll keep it very brief. This may not set well with a lot of people here, but government can't be all things to all people. I mean, that seems to be the road we've been going down for 50 years now. I appreciate the fact that these folks have people coming over, using their yard for a restroom. But on the other hand, when we had our
10th anniversary of the Korean War Memorial event this last June, we hired somebody to come in and bring a porta potty. Now, you know, we just can't provide everything for everybody. If you want to pay for that, if you want to go down the road that we're going down right now, I guess we can do that. But please think very carefully about what you want government to do for you, because the more government does, the more they can tell you what you can do. That's
I have one more little comment, and that's it. I'm a past Montana Department Commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart from Montana. And we have an arbor on the edge of the rose bushes there. We put that in, the Missoula chapter did that. But there's something that is lacking there in terms of access to the World War II memorial and other phases of that park for the handicapped that are in wheelchairs, you know, or disabled people. So that's badly needed, is to put something in there to access for those people. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. I believe there was somebody down the row. Yes.
Well, I think when our grandparents gave the park to the city, they did want children included. I mean, there's been 4 generations of children in my house that have gone and sat in that park at a picnic table. And maybe they were mad at me and they weren't talking to me for the time, you know, but they had a place to go and sit. They had a swing. And I can tell you, I had 2 kids of my own, took in 10 teenagers. There was a lot of ruin going on those swings. But the police were never, ever called because the kids respect the park. And there's also a lot of eyes on that park all the time.
Appreciate
going
that.
on there beyond 10 o'clock, we call the police.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience that has a question, we can pass the microphone around, or a comment, I mean.
My name is John Hoare. I just had a question. Is there any place where we can see an example of this crushed granite pathways locally?
Where we've got one.
I'm trying to think of one local for you right now. The ones I'm familiar with are the very formal Rose Gardens in Spokane. You know, it's actually used in some of the infield material on the high infields, but it's mixed with a clay substance, so we don't recognize it as crushed granite. It compacts quite nicely, but it's a porous surface. It's actually, in my opinion, quite pretty without turning it into flat-out concrete or asphalt.
The other place I can think of off the top of my head is the Rose Garden over by the Missoula. And if I remember correctly, there is a crushed granite pathway there. I don't know if it meets the certain specifications we're going for here. The Americans with Disabilities Act calls for a specific size of the rock that compacts down so that it's accessible. But it's similar to what's there at the Rose Garden. Is there any other comments or questions from the audience? Really appreciate the input that you guys have all shared tonight, and we've recorded it and we'll take it all into account.
You're all
Okay.
welcome to get up and take a closer look at the plans, fill out your forms. We really appreciate the comments, very helpful.
And just by way of explanation on the forms, we have one more comment in the back. We can sure post those on our website. They're not available today, but in the coming, week or so, I'm sure we'd be able to get them up. Yeah, before the comment period ends, for sure. Yep. And just for those of you that are looking at the form, these questions that are here are set up with a Likert scale, where if you read the question, if you strongly agree with the statement that's there, I guess they're not questions, they're statements. If you strongly agree, circle 5, strongly disagree, circle 1, if you're somewhere in between, circle 2 through 4, and feel free to leave those back here on the table or come talk to us. Yes? This is the last round of public comment, since it's already been through 2 other rounds of public comment. And
Every meeting we have is public.
Council's public. Okay, so Donna's telling me that when it is presented to Park Board, that's a public meeting, you're welcome to come make comment. Same as when it's presented to council, you're welcome to come and make comment. Yeah, potentially it could. Yep. Okay, one other question? Let me check on that.